Hi everyone, it's Hazel from Empowering Your Circle podcast. Today, my guest is Elaine Gold. And you know what? I'm really excited to find out a bit more, and I think you will be as well, because she is highly experienced management consultant. She's got over 30 years experience working with lots of founders and leadership teams. But she's also described as the calm voice in a noisy AI space. Now, if you're anything like me, a few years ago, when it sort of all of this was coming out to light, I was so fearful of it. It was like the word AI or the initials AI were things that were like needing to be demystified for me because I was quite fearful about where it was going and what it was going to do. But now, when you come across people like Elaine who help leaders use AI to make confident decisions, strengthen relationships, but also protect reputations, because human judgment is really important. I think we sometimes forget that. It's like, let's plug it into, Copilot, Gemini, ChatGPT, all those. And we kind of go, oh, let's just go with whatever they've put up. And we forget, hang on a minute, we're human, we're here for a reason. So it's really important to kind of think about the wisdom that someone like Elaine's going to give leadership to help us get through what we need to remember. We are using AI and it's good, but we have to keep the human side. So welcome, Elaine.
Well, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here.
So I guess with all of the experience you have in terms of what I said, management consulting and working alongside leaders and founders, um, you kind of went through significant professional and personal change with the business failure and stuff through 2007, 8. You kind of moved internationally. So I guess steadying through change is really important to you in aspects, and the AI is definitely a change. So I guess, what can leaders do in particular to make sure that they are not only studying themselves and working through, but also all of their workforce and things like that with all of these AI sort of changes?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and thanks for that introduction. Certainly, at a professional level, I've been involved in a lot of change, and as you say, helping organizations and individuals in change. Now, I think what we can learn from the current situation is that we have to hold steady. There is so much change happening at an incredible pace. And there is kind of like there's the FOMO thing, fear of missing out. Oh, there's a new platform coming, or there's a new development on this. I must do that. Now, you don't need to rush in to try all of those new things. You just need to hold steady, focus on your task. What do you want AI to do to help you release your time, to be more productive, to be more effective, whatever. So I help people to identify, what are the right tasks that people should be focusing and using AI on. But yeah, not feel that you have to do the next shiny thing, grab that, try that and test it out. Use a couple of platforms and really sort of dive deep into them. I mean, as I say, there's so much new happening, new things are being developed, and new changes all the time. But just don't feel it's a race. You just need slow and steady. And as you mentioned, the important thing is that AI doesn't replace us. It's human judgment. It's a very effective tool for solopreneurs in particular. It's a
Yeah.
highly intelligent virtual assistant and it will help you. I I get ChatGPT to tell me at the end of each week what it's done for me, how much time it saved me, and what my priorities are for the next week. And it, on average,
Wow.
is it saves me 10 to 12 hours a week. And that's just ChatGPT, and I do use other things as well. So, I am using and harnessing AI to be more productive in my work. And you're going to have to stop me at times because I can rattle on about this sometimes. But the other thing that I see happening at one level that there is, as you mentioned, there's the confusion, there's the lack of confidence in using AI. And then you've got the other end where people are just loving it And particularly when you use voice and it's like talking to another person there. It's your syncing board, it's your sounding board, and they're obsessively using AI all the time. Now that's again another area of balance. How are we using our time productively? And
Yeah,
some people are saying, I'm actually working more because of AI, because I can do so much. So I am
yeah.
working more.
I
So,
think no, that's fine. No, I totally agree. And I think what's interesting is what you said at the end of the week, ask it how much it saved you,
mm,
because I would never have thought to ask it that. Because
mm,
for me, and you were saying about solopreneurs, young, small businesses and whatever, for me, I use it. I'm very, very careful about what I put into it and ask it.
yeah,
Because if you ask it very briefly something, what you get is not going to be really what you wanted. And
mm,
then that's a bit of a time waster
mm,
because you go backwards and forwards. So you have to be really
mm,
clear
you
about what
do.
it is that you're inputting into it. Um,
Yeah.
but then it starts to recognize, what you're asking and what your voice is and that sort of thing, which some people,
Mm,
I've said to somebody the other day and they're like, oh, but that's like, and I said, no, it's still your voice because
yeah.
you are going to take what it gives you and you're still going to amend it. Because I don't put it straight up there and go, oh, this is my voice.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is a good starting point, but now I need to add my bit into it. But I do think that checking on how much you use it and saved you is a really good tool. So I hadn't even really thought about that.
Yeah.
Um, and also, you were mentioning, there's lots of things. There's like
Mm,
everywhere you turn, it's like use AI for this, use AI for that, whatever. Um, but because there's so many things. I know you help them, but what kind of things do you like? Let's say a leader of a large corporate versus a leader of a small person that owns like maybe got 10 employees. There's a big difference there.
mm.
What kind of things should they or could they use to be a little bit more, I don't know, maybe efficient or productive?
Yeah, I mean, there are regular surveys being done as to how people are using whatever, all of the different platforms. And across all of the platforms, consistently, the top uses are emails,
Yeah.
drafting emails, producing reports, taking meeting notes, and particularly in the larger corporates where the organization is using something like Copilot, most typically, then obviously if you're doing a lot of work with spreadsheets, that's really very effective use of AI with Copilot on Excel and spreadsheets. And I speak as somebody who always hated Excel or any sort of spreadsheet. So having somebody say put the formulas in here, or what does this tell me? I want a scenario on this kind of profit loss scenario. Can organize that. It's just fantastic for someone like me that always shied away from Excel, but using that. And for the solopreneur, clearly the top uses tend to be for social media and marketing purposes, creating copy. But as you were saying, you've still got to bring your voice in. And if you're using AI to write your social media posts or your marketing materials, that's where you've really got to make sure that your voice is coming through, because all the marketers will say, you are your brand. So
Mm.
that little AI is not your brand. You are your brand. So how are you working together to make sure that your brand comes through? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that people are fearful of, and you hear it every now and again in the news and different things, is potential reputational damage. Like if you're not using
Mm.
it the right way and people put
Yeah,
information into it that maybe they shouldn't
absolutely.
be putting into it, that
Yeah,
suddenly, is out in the wider world and you didn't
yeah.
realize that it was going to be out there, you
Mm.
know. What kind of things do you know of, any reputational damage issues that might have happened or why they might happen or how they happen?
There's some huge big ones for some very large organizations. I mean, there's cases like with Deloitte, particularly in Australia, where one of their researchers put in absolutely. We talk about AI hallucinating, and that was something, particularly in the early stages, it did because it was very much a people pleaser. So it will make stuff up, and and what was happening was that in some of these very expensive government government being the client reports, pure fabrication was being put in, research that didn't exist. And in the UK, there's been cases where law firms and a particular lawyer has been dismissed because, again, quoting cases that were fabricated. So
Wow.
clearly you have to have that check. And in the work, I talk about using the right tasks for your work, the right tools for those tasks, and the right instructions. And in those instructions is always go back and review and check. And that's not an AI issue. It's a leadership issue. It's a management issue to go back and check. What I find, I mean, more organizations, the larger organizations that I deal with, are having corporate AI policies. They might have a AI uh, steering group or committee. So they're putting policies together and what we call guardrails. Now, they do need to be in place, and that's true whatever size organization. So even as an individual, be careful about the personal data that you put in. You wouldn't sort of give full names of a client or a prospect that you're working with. Be careful about sharing addresses and any personal financial information on there because some of the platforms, particularly outside of the corporate environment, would have open access that people can actually sort of that data can go beyond your own network and your own computer. So yeah, it's, you're very, very cautious about that. I always say to people, really regularly check your settings. And you talked about personalization. Um, that is happening more automatically because AI learns more about you because of the work that you're giving it. But in your settings, there is a personalization section, and it's worth going back and checking that from time to time because things get stored in the memory. And it may be that you've taken your business down a different avenue. So it's worth checking what's in the memory to change that. And in the personalization, that's where you can say more about your preferred tone of voice as well. And that's also where you can check the security settings as well.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier that I had this fear of, this AI and things like that. So back, let's say in the 1980s, for example, when they were moving from this kind of project management waterfall type of situation
Mm,
to move into this agile way of working,
mm,
people at the top, leadership and all that were like, we don't want to ruin our status quo. We know where we're going. We know how this
yeah,
works. So
yeah,
the mindset shift was really difficult to
mm,
shift that for some people.
mm,
What's a way to think about mindset shift for people who are like that now? Because there's a lot of, I still hear from people who are like, yes, but we don't really want to go down that route because we're all right the way we
yeah,
are. But this is the
yeah.
future. This is where it's going. So what kind of things can people do to sort of think about their mindset shift?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I think the way you need to think about AI is it's another team member. It's a highly intelligent assistant, whatever tasks you give it to focus in on. And yes, you will come across, and I do come across people who are skeptical, they're fearful about it, they don't want to go there. But it's like most things, you encourage them to take little tiny baby steps, try something out. So maybe write an email yourself, put it into AI and say, how can I improve that? And see what comes out.
Small
So
steps.
small steps, just try different things that you're doing there. Have a look at an article that you've read somewhere. You summarize it and see what the key points are, and then put that article into AI and say, review this article. What are the key points in there talking, and compare what AI comes up with what you have created. So don't put what you think in. Wait, just do it old-fashioned way, handwritten, or type your notes. This is my summary of this report, and then see what AI comes up with. So, play with it, play with it.
Yeah.
And although I say it can be quite addictive to use the voice mode on it, but wander around, if you're going out for a walk, this is where a lot of people do their thinking, don't they? If they're out for a walk, they're
Yeah.
thinking, chat, say, "Oh, I've got this idea, I'm thinking about doing that, or I'm not sure, is this a market I should be focusing on, or whatever?" And have that dialogue, natural dialogue, and see what comes back with that and how useful it is. And use it on personal things. I mean, I know our social media gets flooded with caricatures and
Yeah.
cartoons, but get it to plan a holiday, get it to give you recipe
Yeah.
ideas, just begin to build your confidence with those baby steps in trying things out.
Yeah, because I put, I'm going to go on holiday for a week soon, and I put in the where I'd booked like the hotel, and I said, what can I do around here like in 2 days? And
Mm,
it came back and sort of said, do you like to go to museums and blah 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 blah. And so it gave me the prompters, and suddenly I had an itinerary. Now whether I follow that itinerary
yeah.
100% is, but it literally in 30 seconds it was in front of me. Now if I'd have gone somewhere else or like trying to do it myself, I would have really struggled because I'd have been sitting there for ages going, what's around the area and what can I do? But now I have like a bit of an insight into what I can do, I suppose, when I'm there. So there are good things about it, in no doubt on my mind. But just if we can go back to where you said about the talking, what do you use for that? What kind of, is there a specific one or two options that people have got to use for that?
I
Or is
mean,
that
most
like
people,
Copilot or
ChatGPT is by far and away the most popular platform. I mean, it was the first one to launch anyway. And on there, in the free version as well as the paid version, you'll see a little microphone.
oh,
So you just
yeah,
you
there
just
is. Sorry, I
you
just saw
press the
it.
little microphone and chat away. I mean, there's two ways. You can dictate using the microphone, and it'll obviously just type the text and come through. Or there's a blue sort of microphone next to it which you can press, and that's where you can talk, and you'll get a voice response back. And it's very nice, even female voice, British voice tone back, and you can have that kind of dialogue. And it really, it does feel like you're actually talking to somebody at the other end of your phone when you're using it in that way.
Yeah,
So,
I do think the more I speak to people who work from home by themselves, they do tend to find that that is something they find really helpful, is to have
mm,
something that's next to them that they can just, like I'm
yeah,
not by myself, I'm asking a question.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I do think
And
that
if
helps
you're
with,
sorry,
yeah,
I was
go.
just saying, when you're talking about sort of where you are, where if you're out and you're traveling and you want to know what's the area, if you've got a paid version, that enables you to take a photo wherever you are in the street and say, "Look, here I am in the middle of Copenhagen. Where's a good coffee shop nearby?" And it will immediately come back messages.
Wow, okay.
So it's a much more sort of visual way of using than maybe Google Maps.
I Oh, that is just, when you think about it, that is actually probably a useful thing. There's probably
Yeah,
so many useful things that we are not utilizing,
yeah,
A, because we haven't really looked deep enough into them, because, like you said, there's so many new things out there all the time.
yeah.
For example, I use Canva, but then it's kind of got use AI to do
Yes,
whatever.
yeah,
And also they are getting it is getting better with pictures, because one of
it
my
is.
branding pictures I did a blog post at the beginning of the year
Yeah,
of the horse, and I put my photo in there once before to say, can you,
yeah,
create this picture. It wasn't very good even about probably 6 months ago. But the
Yeah.
photo that it came back up with was kind of almost me with so it
Yeah.
hadn't even manipulated my image in any shape or form. And I kind of went, oh, that's quite cool. I can use that. Whereas the other one, about 6 months ago, I would never have been able to put that up because it
No,
didn't have
and
any.
it really it's getting better and better, more precise about the whatever. I mean, while we're talking about different uses, I find one of the most underused free platforms is Notebook LM. Now that's part of Google.
Yeah.
And it works quite differently from AI platforms in that it's not searching outside of the web. You start different projects and you put in the kind of resources that you want to draw on that. So that could be links to YouTube videos, it could be websites that you admire, it could be reports or whatever, you put it there. But what it will do is create for you really good, high quality PowerPoint slides. And you
Wow.
just, or, you can load your own notes. So you might put a note down, some thoughts, a Word doc about a presentation you want to give, and it will produce that. It will produce quizzes for you. You can take a YouTube video and get it to turn it into a podcast for you, which you can listen to while you're driving instead of being distracted by a
Wow.
video. So, I mean, it's free and it's really worth using. I think primarily the audience were students because it's really great for if you're trying to learn something or research a particular topic, you put in all those sources and it will help structure that. It will create graphic documents, it will create mind maps, and as I say,
Oh,
slides. It will create really good slides for you.
wow. And that was called Notebook.
Notebook LM.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go and look that one.
have a play.
I just, there's so much around because now,
There
obviously,
is.
with my podcast, my son also does a podcast for his business that he started, but he's got like all the I don't know all the fancy stuff, and he's like, I can create shorts in like just clicking a button or whatever of all these things. He says you need to do that too, and I'm like, yes, I'm getting to it, but he's so into all of that. So he's downloaded all the things that are going to like be
Yeah,
important. So I'm just like, okay, you need to learn, I think, sometimes from our younger generation because they
absolutely.
are
Yeah,
utilizing things that we don't even know about.
yeah.
Some of them we might not ever need to know about, but some of them I think they are so used to using them that
Mm,
it's a pity not to kind of jump in
mm,
and learn from
mm,
them. In
mm,
my corporate role, I was a team lead for younger guys who were like into AI. And,
mm.
I remember one of them coming and saying to me, look, if you put the ingredients of your fridge and your cupboard into ChatGPT, it will give you your recipes for the evening meal. And at the time I hadn't done anything like that. So I was like, what? So anyway, and then he just, and then here's your evening meal.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and I mean I didn't try that, but apparently someone said, oh, yeah, we did it and it tasted all right. So it's interesting when you look, but you have to embrace the fact that sometimes asking those more junior is quite a good thing. It's not a bad
yeah,
thing,
yeah.
because we can learn from them just as much as they are learning from us. So
And
um
from your work with corporates or anything really, change can feel uncomfortable,
yeah,
but just live with that because it usually means you're learning. You know, that discomfort is all about learning and making that change and implement it. And we all remember what it was like when we first learned to drive. Everything feels awkward and you're having to think about things the whole time. And then, you pass your test and wow, you don't even think about it. And I think
yeah.
that the tool of AI becomes like that. It's about learning, it's about practicing it and testing it out and finding use cases that are really valuable for you.
Yeah. And like you, just taking on your analogy of the driving of the car, I saw something on my Facebook the other day and it said, I feel like I'm driving or that I'm actually like in a Mario Kart game on the road now, because even though I'm a very experienced driver, I am going like this because I'm going around my potholes. So it's like I've got to learn something new. I've got to learn how to now navigate. So he said all those months and years of doing my Mario Kart has actually come into play on the road. But I
Well, we
was
get
like,
driverless cars now. We don't have to
I know.
worry.
So, but yeah, I think the thing is, it's really important to think we're always learning. And if we
Yeah,
stop the learning,
yeah,
no matter what
yeah,
it is,
yeah,
AI is learning from us, but actually we should probably be learning on
absolutely.
how that's
Yeah,
helping us as well.
yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
really important. I think the visibility for all of us is key.
Mm,
And as I said, I totally believe that in corporates in particular, you have so many junior members of staff who could bring a completely different angle to what's happening in your businesses right now. Because, I'm not saying the people up the top are stayed in the way they think,
mm,
but because these people are using it all the time, I think it really is a good tool to start kind of asking them, what do you think? What would you
yeah,
use? What would you
yeah.
look at? Because they are the people that are the future. They're taking forward all of this stuff,
Yeah.
you know.
And I encourage corporates to have AI champions, at all levels, regardless of position in authority, to have AI champions and have that kind of informal, whether it's a steering group or whatever, where you get people together from time to time to share ideas, to say, what are you using AI on? I've talked to a couple of people in quite large organizations recently where they are just personally very motivated to test and try AI things out, and have been surprised when talking to their colleagues that their colleagues are just not used it in that way. One
Yeah,
guy was using, again, going back to spreadsheets, Excel, came up with a really quick way. It took him a while to get the instructions right, got those clear. And so those are the people that you want who are actually doing that, to get together and say, okay, how can we harness your knowledge, your experimentation for the betterment of the whole organization? But then an area that I'm increasingly interested in, which ties back to my work with leadership, is that not only are individuals using AI a lot more, but you're now getting whole departments that are agents. They're AI agents and they're processing. So that raises the whole issue about employment opportunities and what impact AI is having on employment. But you're getting what we call hybrid organizations now, where as a manager of a department, part of that department is going to be entirely agents. They're working 24/7, they're doing the task for you, great from a productivity point of view, but how do you manage that, and what's the impact of that hybrid organization and that agentic
yeah.
team with the human team? So it's fascinating times.
I think so, because I do still think people are sort of still quite nervous about, losing their jobs or what that
Of
means.
course.
And, and quite rightly, when you look around, there's always going to be a number of different things. I think one of the people I was talking to, they said, well, yes, but, AI can do coding, so they don't need me anymore. And it's like, yeah, but who's going to code the AI? Like who's going to be managing what that looks like? Because you still need to have that human element to make sure that that's being managed, and that
Mm,
needs coding.
mm,
Not that I'm a coder, but that
mm.
needs
Yeah.
kind of technology to look after what we are expanding in this kind of middle region right now, which is concerning people. I mean, I remember when I was working as a trainer in corporate, you'd think, well, is that going to take over my job? Like,
Mm,
because it can
mm.
like, I don't know, train.
Yeah.
It can be
Yeah.
a me in the picture,
Mm,
and just listen to the words. But actually, the more that I was training people, the more you realize people just want human. They need people who understand what they're
mm,
going through, and they need
mm,
that empathy, and they need that sort of thing.
mm.
And you're not going to get that from somebody who's going to read almost from a script
Yeah.
and give you that information, you know. And I think that's a really important tool that we have to remember. We all still need and want that element of human and empathy and that sort of thing. So
Yeah, I've written quite a bit about this in some of the articles that I post regularly on LinkedIn, and I've also just started a Substack page as well about the skills that you need in the future and that you can develop. Because I mean, clearly, one, as you've said, is empathy, because that's not never going to be there really in AI. It can pretend to be
yeah,
empathetic, but you're not going to get that genuine there. And it's human judgment, so you make the decisions. AI would do the work, but you make the decisions. You bring human judgment to things. But as I say, the key thing is to get into that habit of reviewing the output of AI and making sure that there's human set of eyes on that, whether it's to make sure it's your voice that's coming across or whether it's to make sure that nothing false or vulnerable information has been put
yeah.
in that puts your company at risk. So those kind of guardrails need to be there. But again, I was talking to somebody yesterday who said that their daughter, very senior in a large organization, where they've completely banned AI within the organization. Now,
Oh,
I don't see how you can police that, really, in all honesty. We've all got our phones. You're going to nip to the loo and you're going to come up with a result. So far better that the organization has a very open policy, and it needn't be a thick document, but just a one-page policy around using AI in the organization, and is open and transparent about that and embrace it rather than say, no, this is a box, you cannot use it. I think that's going to create more problems down the line, really.
yeah, I agree. I think sometimes, you know, I'm not sure which way is the right way, but I think there is always potential,
Mm,
like going to have that element of AI that's going to be with us. I suppose, you know, one of the last things that I was going to say was I think what's got to happen as well, though, is that there's this element of critical thinking and thinking for ourselves doesn't disappear
yeah.
because, you know, when I was, you know, in my 20s, I used critical thinking. I thought for myself, I had to. I was thrown into a job that no one gave me any knowledge of how to do. It was working with the, you know, with banks and understanding people's accounts and all sorts of things. And I had to
Hmm.
work it out myself. Now, nowadays, it's like, well, I don't know what to do. So just put it into ChatGPT or Copilot and
Yeah,
whatever, and it'll help me. But you can't lose that element of
yeah,
those really important things, which should be you as a human being. You should have to be
absolutely.
thinking for yourself as well. I think that's really, really important.
Mm, mm. And I do, I work closely with a couple of pure technical companies because my background isn't in tech. Like, I'm not a coder either, but I've always had what I call techie tendencies, and and been fascinated by how technology can enhance people's work. And working with these tech companies is one that does a lot of, and has done for many years, workflow automations within the organizations. And their clients are saying they've not reduced the headcount, but they've released the sort of routine jobs are being done and automated, and it's released the human that was doing those jobs to really enhance that creativity, use it in different ways, that human judgment, and have a more rewarding work. And I think that's the way it should be introduced within organizations, not to replace the human being, but to release the human being.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's the thing. There's a lot, we know so much and we can help so much and we can do a lot of things. But I think, you know, I think that might be one of the hardest things for a leader in the future, actually,
Yeah,
is to find that balance,
it
is
is.
to find that that happy balance so that they
Yeah.
don't lose their human
Yeah.
touch, but they don't fully rely
Mm,
on
mm,
sort of
mm,
AI and machinery, like that
mm,
kind of automatic stuff. Because I think that will be one of the hardest elements. So you have your
mm,
work cut out for you, Elaine.
mm, mm, mm. It's great.
Because I don't know, I just think that's going to be one of the hardest bits, to deal with lots of that balancing of human and AI.
It is
So,
that's the whole thing about the hybrid organization. I think it needs a clear thought process as to what the impact is on leadership within those organizations. Yeah.
wow. So, that was an amazing podcast for me. I learned a lot. I know a lot of other people will have learned a lot. And honestly, if you seriously need help, getting help like through your management levels and lower, please make sure you speak to Elaine, because she's going to have a wealth of information and, some great tools to help you get through that. So thank you so much, Elaine, for being on
My
my
pleasure.
podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you, Hazel.